I wish to begin with 26 words from the Royal Commission. I quote, "We were treated as slaves, beaten and abused, used for their perverted desires. No love or kindness, no safety or warmth, always hungry and always frightened." These words are not a tale from a foreign country or the distant past. These words came from one amongst us, describing his life as a child, a cold life of fear, hunger, loneliness, abuse. Australia failed this child. Australia failed tens of thousands of children across generations and across the country. Our nation let you down. Today we offer you our nation's apology with humility, with honesty, with hope for healing now, and with a fire in our belly to ensure that our children will grow up safe in the future. We do this because it is right, because it is overdue, because Australians must know and face up to the truth about our past. But above all, we do this because of you. I say to you here in the galleries, here in the Great Hall, on the lawns and beyond, I say to you in the big cities and country towns, today is because of you. Today is because of your advocates, your networks, your organisations, and your leadership. It is you who bravely fought the long battle for justice, for recognition, for truth to be believed. It is you who have brought this day into being. It is you who kept coming forward again and again.
And again.
You dug beneath scar tissue. You told strangers and people in power of the most terrifying moments in your memory. Our fellow Australians should understand that you've given so much of yourselves through your stories, but it was never for yourself, never for your own sake. Our fellow Australians should understand that you spoke up in the Royal Commission, you relived your pain in the Royal Commission for the next generation of Australian children. Australians should understand that you spoke and relived your pain because you want to make sure that what happened to you did not happen to other children. Today belongs to you. Today belongs to your families. Today belongs to your loved ones who've been there for you in the darkest of times. Today also belongs to your brothers and sisters who are not here. People who perhaps never told a single soul about what happened to them.
Michael Johnson.
Today belongs to people who have locked away the pain so deeply in order to survive, to get by. They simply cannot revisit the ordeal. Today belongs to people who've moved overseas to try and escape the memory. Today belongs to the people who are too ill to be here. Today belongs to people who are in the grip of addiction or poverty. Today belongs to people in the prison system whose lives were shunted on the wrong track by the abuse they suffered as children. Today belongs to the children who might not have suffered direct sexual abuse, but endured other terrible forms of abuse, violence, cruelty, neglect. This is a hard day for our fellow Australians, some of them. This is a hard day for those who were abused outside of an institution. I hope they can take something from the fact that the Royal Commission's recommendations reach beyond institutions to the protection of all children. And my fellow Australians, Today belongs to the people who did not live long enough to hear this apology. Many of our honoured guests are wearing these badges. On them they've written the names of their brothers and sisters and dear friends who are not here today. Brothers and sisters who fought for decades, sadly through illness or old age, have not lived to see this day or indeed justice done. And of course there are those who took their own lives, stolen from our world by the trauma, the hurt and the hardship that they have endured. We will remember them today, and Australia must promise to remember them always.
Always.
Mr. Speaker, to everyone to whom this day belongs, I say on behalf of the Labor opposition and the Commonwealth Parliament and the people of Australia, we are sorry. We are sorry for every childhood stolen, every life lost. We are sorry for every betrayal of trust, every abuse of power. We are sorry for trauma measured in decades, for scars that can never heal. We are sorry for every cry for help that fell on deaf ears and hard hearts. We are sorry for every crime that was not investigated, every criminal who went unpunished. And we are sorry for every time that you were not heard and not believed. We hear you now. We believe you. Australia believes you. And we are sorry it has taken so long to say these words. We are sorry for wrongs that can never be made right. We are sorry that you and your brothers and sisters have been left to fight for justice, respect and dignity on your own. You should not be alone any longer. Australia is with you. And we are sorry that the abuse and the assault and the rape of children is still going on and being covered up this very day in this very country. We are sorry that we still cannot protect all our children. And we are sorry, all of us in this parliament, that we've not yet done enough to guarantee that this cannot happen again. Too many Australian children are still living unsafe lives at risk. It's the true test, isn't it, of our words? It's whether from this day forward we see some meaningful change for the better in this country. It is why the words of this apology must come with action. Last week I was told of a survivor who was asked would he be attending today. He said no. He said these apologies are only so politicians can look good in front of the public. And you know what? After decades of betrayal by governments, by the police, by the courts and the law, by foster parents and orphanages, by teachers and schools and sporting clubs, by churches and charities and more, he has every right to be sceptical that words are cheap.
Cheap.
To you here who have gathered, I say that you have fought for and earned more than words. You deserve real change in your lives and the law and for the kids in the future. It means improving the lives of children now, recognising that vulnerable children don't resolve every issue miraculously the day they turn 18. Their support shouldn't fall off a bureaucratic cliff based on the date you were born. It also means on delivering on the promise of the Royal Commission and its recommendations. I acknowledge the work of previous Prime Ministers, Prime Minister Rudd and his advocacy, Prime Minister Gillard, who had the courage and the leadership to initiate this Royal Commission. You are so very welcome today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I acknowledge Prime Minister Abbott for continuing the Royal Commission. Prime Minister Turnbull put this apology on the parliamentary agenda. We recognise him. I acknowledge and support the initiatives announced today by the Prime Minister. I also acknowledge Jenny Macklin, who's given so much to this process.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you all.
I do want to thank all of the Royal Commissioners and their dedicated staff for their intellectual and emotional commitment that they made over many years. Already other countries are looking at what Australia has done as possibly best practice around the world for empowering survivors and victims, for putting the people who matter at the centre. The final report, its 17 volumes, occupy 3 full shelves of the Parliamentary Library. We cannot leave it tucked away in a quiet corner of this building, slowly gathering dust. We are never going to get a better set of opinions than this Royal Commission. We are never going to be presented with a more comprehensive set of solutions than this Royal Commission. And
Thank
whether
you
it is
all.
making redress right or reforming the law, it is now up to us in this Parliament, not the survivors and victims. We have the power, we have the authority, we have the responsibility to turn these recommendations into actions without caveats, without compromise. Labor will, wherever we sit in this Parliament, in coming years, unequivocally support the implementation of the Royal Commission, with no discounting nor delay. It is not the time for government or institutions to haggle over the dollars, to hide behind the lawyers. No time to pretend that a token payment handed over in secret 40 years ago can be changed by a retrospective formula into an adequate sum. This is not the time to ask for more time, as if this process has been rushed. People have already died waiting for the justice they are due. People are dying. There's Tony, a 54-year-old man in palliative care in Toowoomba, watching this day perhaps, abused in 2 different institutions, 2 different states, both government and Salvation Army. It's an unforgivable final indignity that the legal hurdles mean that he may not live to receive this modest redress. Mr. Speaker, as the Royal Commission's gone about its work, I know many Australians have been watching the news and reading the articles and saying to each other in horror and disbelief, why are we only hearing this now? Why didn't we know? Why weren't we told? There are 1,000 different reasons.
Because you hit it.
Every individual life unique. But at the heart of so many reasons is this deeply uncomfortable truth.
Maybe
Too many were told, they just didn't listen. Too many did know, they just didn't act. It makes you angry to think that we were raised to respect these institutions all of the time, not understanding the danger that some of our fellow children were in. Institutions we were taught to respect, people in authority that we were just simply